Goodness gracious. The likelihood of me reading all of these by October is really slim. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Cait. Today I'm going to take you through all the prep that I am doing for my upcoming master's degree in literature and art at the University of Oxford. It honestly still baffles me that I will be starting my master's at Oxford in October. I rewatch my reaction video so often and it's just wow. I actually can't believe that this is happening, and I'm so excited to take you all along that journey with me. The master's program that I'm going to be doing is through the continuing education department at Oxford. This department allows me to pursue my education, pursue my master's, while I continue working and living in Dublin with my family. So it does provide a great flexible option for me to still pursue my passion and my education. Since I am a part-time student who won't be living on campus, I was also accepted into Kellogg College. Yes, you heard that right. Kellogg as in Kellogg cornflakes. It's the same family. And this college is one of the newer graduate-only colleges, and this college student base is essentially students that are mature students, students that are there part-time, who have families, and who are coming back into education essentially at a later stage in life. So it is the perfect college for me, and I'm so thrilled to be going there. Let's get into how I'm actually preparing for this master's that is starting in October. So I'm doing two things, and I'll probably split up this video into two parts. The first part is that I will be reading a whole lot of books in preparation for the Masters in October, which obviously is amazing, and I'm so excited to show you those books. And the second thing that I'll be doing is setting up my Notion template for the Masters. So let's dive into today what books I will be reading for my upcoming MLA. I come from a law and politics background, and I have just completed and passed my foundational certificate in English literature, which was also through the continuing education department. And the Masters of Literature and Arts, or the MLA, as you may have guessed, is an interdisciplinary master's. It looks at literature, history, art, architecture, and culture, and how they all kind of combine into enriching research in particular periods. Right, so we've got quite a few books here that I'm hoping to read before October. Most of them are history books. I just feel like I need more in-depth look into history itself. So the first one that I have here is E.H. Carr, What is History? I love that this is in the Penguin Modern Classics edition. It's going to fit right into my bookshelves. The facts are like fish on the fishmonger's slab. The historian collects them, takes them home, and cooks and serves them. In answering the question, what is history, E.H. Carr's acclaimed and influential bestseller shows that the facts of history are simply those which the historian selects for scrutiny. His fluent and hugely wide-ranging account of the nature of history and the role of the historian argues that all history is to some degree subjective, written by individuals who are above all people of their own time. So, absolutely excited to dive into that one. I then got this little Keith Jenkins Rethinking History Rutledge book. This looks very doable to kind of get through. History means many things to many people, but finding an answer to the question, what is history, is a task few feel equipped to answer nowadays. And yet, at the same time, history has never been more popular, whether in the press, on the television, or at the movies. In understanding our present, it seems we cannot escape the past. So if you want to explore this tantalizing subject, where do you start? What are the critical skills you need to begin to make sense of the past? Keith Jenkins' book is the perfect introduction. In clear, concise prose, it guides the reader through the controversies and debates that surround historical thinking at the present time, and offers readers the means to make their own discoveries. So I think actually I might start with this one and then move on to this history read. So maybe this is the first one, because that looks like a proper introduction. I then found this book, which was also on the reading list, the prep reading list, but it was at my secondhand bookstore, so that's helpful. So it's a secondhand copy of On History by Eric Hobsbawn. This looks very, very cool. In these stimulating and engaging essays, Eric Hobsbawn reflects upon the theory, practice, and development of history and its relevance to the modern world. Covering a wide range of topics, they reflect lifelong concern with the relation between past, present, and future. He deals, among many other subjects, with the problems of writing history, its abuses, and the historian's responsibility, with maths and current historical trends with Europe, the Russian Revolution, and the descent into worldwide barbarianism that threatens to destroy the civilization we have inherited from European Enlightenment. Wow, that sounds so fascinating. I'm very, very excited to dive into this. I think this looks so interesting and clearly still so prevalent if it's being recommended on our reading list. And I believe this was published 1997, so still very relevant even today. So I think that's very, very cool. So I'll be looking at these 3 history books specifically, and I'll feedback on how I find them and what I think about them. We'll then move into kind of like the art/culture books that I've picked up. And the first one that I've picked up is this Ways of Seeing by John Berger. I really like this little penguin edition. It looks super cute. John Berger's Ways of Seeing changed the way people think about painting and art criticism. This watershed work shows through word and image how what we see is always influenced by a whole host of assumptions concerning the nature of beauty, truth, civilization, form, taste, class, and gender, exploring the layers of meaning within oil paintings, photographs, and graphic art. Berger argues that when we see, we are not just looking, we are reading the language of images. I think this kind of tends a little bit more into cultural studies as well, so I'm very, very excited to dive into this one. It's also got, I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but it's got some pictures in there as well, so it's going to be an interesting sort of introduction into how I look at art and culture. This book, Catherine McCormack's Woman in the Picture, was not on the reading list, but while I was searching for these books, I came across this, and I thought this was particularly interesting because my areas of interest are generally early modern representations of minorities, specifically women of color, and how these representations kind of translate into cultural practices. So I picked up a couple of other books that kind of relate to this, but this book I picked up specifically around like art and woman art and the power of looking. I think this is so interesting. Women's identity has long been stifled by a limited set of archetypes, found everywhere in pictures from art history classics to advertising, while women artists have been overlooked and held back from shaping more empowering roles. In this impassioned book, art historian Catherine McCormack asks us to look again at what these images have told us to value. She shows us how women artists from Bertha Morisset to Beyonce, Judy Chicago to Clara Walker have offered us new ways of thinking about women's identity, sexuality, race, and power. Woman in the Picture gives us new ways of seeing the art of the past and familiar images of today, so we may be free women from these restrictive roles and embrace the breadth of woman's vision. I think this sounds so interesting, kind of right up the alleyway of my research, so I was very excited to pick this up. Then one of the recommended books about art and art history was this, Art and Its Histories, a Reader, edited by Steve Edwards. This book I also picked up secondhand, so you can see there's some highlights in here, which I always like to see what other people have highlighted. I'm not particularly a highlighty person in textbooks. If I am going to annotate, I'm going to annotate with a pencil. But this book looked really, really interesting. This volume presents 89 influential texts that have played a significant role in shaping modern judgments and values about art, emphasizing the debates and ideological assumptions around the Western canon of art. The book ranges through art history from Pliny the Elder to current issues of gender, post-colonialism, and museum policy. A general introduction to the book provides a survey of recent debates on the canon of Western art. The source text and critical writing of the volume are then organized around 6 art history topics: academia's museums and canons of art, the changing status of the artist, gender and art, the challenge of the avant-garde, views of difference, and contemporary cultures of display. The source text each prefaced by a short introduction with information about the author and guidelines for reading the texts, including seminal writings by Vasari, Lebrun, and Baudelaire, among many others, as well as examples of different kinds of literature on art. This is very, very detailed, so I'm really looking forward to diving into this. I may not be able to read the whole lot of it, but we'll see. So yeah, so these are kind of like the art history books / culture books that I am looking to read before I dive into my MLA. Obviously these aren't all the readings that they put on the prep reading list, but I just picked out the ones that really kind of jumped out to me. So yeah, so those are the ones that come sort of off the list. I then ventured and pulled out some from my collection, as well as a couple of new books that relate to my area of interest, these early modern representations of minorities. So I picked up Lose Your Mother by Saidiya Hartman. This one is actually a book that Kaelyn recommended for me, the Redhead Academic. I will pop her details down below. She recommended this book to me. To lose your mother is to be severed from your kin, to forget your past, to inhabit the world as an outsider, seeking her own origins. Saidiya Hartman follows a slave route back to Ghana, tracing the history of the Atlantic trade. But there are no known survivors of her lineage, no relatives to find. She is a stranger in search of strangers. A genre-straddling masterpiece of historical travel writing, Lose Your Mother confronts the impossibility of return for the descendants of the enslaved, and with courageous candor reckons their enduring losses. This sounds super, super fascinating. Very similar to Salt, which is a play by Selena Thompson that I have buried over there, but very similar sort of idea. And I think that's so interesting to kind of hear how we've got these narratives even in contemporary fiction that are still prevalent in our society, and that kind of just talks to this idea of how cultural practices have developed. The other one that I picked up is Black Tudors, The Untold Story by Miranda Kauffman. This looks super, super interesting, and I've jumped into this a little bit. This is essentially, this was actually shortlisted for the Wolfson History Prize, which is super exciting. From the long forgotten records emerge the remarkable stories of Africans who lived free in Tudor England. So this really does touch on kind of my research, and I'm interested in diving into this more. I then, while I was traveling around Scotland, was it last year? Must have been last year. While I was traveling around Scotland last year, I picked this up in one of the bookstores, Slaves in the Highlands, The Silenced Histories of Scotland and the Caribbean. The Scots were involved in every stage of the slave trade, from capturing slave ships to auctioning captured Africans in the colonies and hunting down those who escaped from bondage. This book focuses on the Scottish Highlanders who engaged in or benefited from these crimes against humanity in the Caribbean islands, and some reluctantly, but many with enthusiasm and without remorse. Their voices are clearly heard in the archives, while in the same sources their victims' stories are silenced, reduced to numbers, and listed as property. I think for me this book is going to be really great to kind of understand how I want to approach some of my research. So even though it doesn't pertain directly to my research, it might do in some cases, but it might be a great starting point for me to see how some of this research is already being conducted in archives. So I'm interested in having a look at that. And then something that I have actually read quite a fair bit, and which I'll probably dive into again, is Paul Gilroy's The Black Atlantic. This book is really, really fantastic. It talks about modern Black experiences which cannot be defined solely as African American, Caribbean, or British alone. It is the Black Atlantic culture, transcending ethnicity and nationality, that is capable of deeply enriching our conception of what it means to be modern. The roots of this condition lie deep in transoceanic history and the slave trade. What I really like about this text is this kind of idea of the spaces in between identity, and how the effects of the slave trade have resulted in these kind of transverse cultural identities. So I'll probably dive into this a bit more. And then maybe a little bit different from the text that I'll be looking at. But while I was at my T.S. Eliot summer school, one of the presentations on Eliot and gender, which was really, really fantastic, referenced this book, Desire, a Memoir by Jonathan Dollimore. And this book, I mean, this is essentially as I said, it's a memoir of Jonathan Dollimore and his experiences. But this meditative and haunting memoir, renowned cultural critic Jonathan Dollimore recounts a life spent dedicated to understanding the delight and disorder of human desire. Through recollections of his struggle with depression, his discovery of love and literature, and his adventures cruising in the gay subcultures of late 20th century New York, Brighton, and Sydney, Dollimore weaves a candid, nuanced narrative of life in a newly liberated and hedonistic world soon to be devastated by AIDS. Effortlessly blending the tragic and comic, Dollimore's unique voice relates a life haunted and torn by loss, and at once intensely personal yet useful, universal experiencing of suffering and longing. So, I mean, I'm diving into this more like as, I suppose, a casual read out of like pure interest more than anything else. But another part of it is just completely fascinated by how cultural practices come to light. So I thought I'd just dive into reading this. I know it's not really in line with my research, but I have started to read it. I'm reading it with another student friend of mine and really, really enjoying it. I'm just short of 70 pages in, and yeah, I'm absolutely loving this book. I'm really, really enjoying it. So, goodness gracious. The likelihood of me reading all of these by October is really, 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 really slim, but you never know, and maybe I just dip into them as I kind of go through my studies, as I kind of engage with the work, engage with what is being taught, and yeah, so I will continue to work through these, and I will keep you all up to date as we go through the process. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you all soon.